I am a freelance artist. I got diagnosed with bipolar manic depression when I was 23, whilst I was in my second year of film degree in Newport. And um, and so I went there to be a filmmaker. And by the time I came out, as well as having my film degree, I had a diagnosis of bipolar and was declared disabled for life.
It came about because I was a police officer for 30 years, and with about 24 years servicing, for no apparent reason, I started feeling as though I wasn't feeling well. Everybody has their own sort of normal. Nobody has the same type of normal. For me, it culminated in the fact, because I was in what was considered to be like a macho occupation, being a police officer, I tended to ignore it, and it got worse and worse. And I ended up having a huge panic attack at home, and I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, I started shouting at my wife and all that, and I didn't understand what was wrong. And then I found out, having spoken to various people afterwards, it was a combination of the stuff that I'd seen and done as a police officer over many years, and it's like an accumulative effect rather than one traumatic thing.
I was diagnosed with schizophrenia in 1992, a few months after my 21st birthday. It all started in my late teens, when I began to hear voices and my paranoia pushed me into an antisocial spiral. Initially, I thought this was normal. After all, didn't everyone have internal monologues? Didn't everyone have mental duality to process information? But as the voices became stronger and more prominent and aggressive and controlling, I began to realize that something was wrong with me.
I have bipolar manic depression, and it's always referred to as the creative disease because it's the one that is associated, like Stephen Fry, Carrie Fisher, Spike Milligan. And so we are kind of deemed to kind of be more fortunate than others because there is a creativity that is fueled by mental health, but also it helps our mental health.
When I started working with Fritz, and because of the fact he's a schizophrenic, that wasn't the reason we got together. We got together because we were working on a film together, and by coincidence he mentioned the fact that he was a filmmaker. And then when we did the film in relation to his condition and the use of creative therapy, it almost came about by accident. And we were talking, and I said, well, we've actually got an ideal person in front of us who's actually part of this partnership, who we can actually film as being someone who's used creative therapy to sort of attend to his sort of issues.
It has taken me most of my 20s and 30s to develop and find various coping mechanisms to deal with these meltdowns.
The thing with mental health is that one of the biggest problems I have is the whole system is based on crisis. So, unfortunately, you can't go and get preemptive help. It's not easily. You can't say, I'm struggling at a low level at this point. The whole service is only geared towards you being in crisis.
After I was diagnosed, my psychiatrist tried me with a variety of antipsychotic medications, but due to the various physical and mental side effects, I found that I just couldn't cope. I mean, just because you're heavily sedated doesn't mean that you're not screaming inside your head. Realizing that the meds weren't working for me, I requested that I come off them.
I've been medication free for about 15 years because the harm that the medication was doing me was outweighing the benefits. And what I decided to do was dedicate my life to living with mental health.
My psychiatrist then suggested that I begin to keep a journal of my thoughts and voices as an alternative to the meds.
It's something that's worked for us, and we would then turn around and say, well, maybe you should try it and it'll work for you.
The difference being is that I carried on with my film degree and was given help, and people go, oh, that's really interesting, that's the creative one. If I had schizophrenia, I would have had a completely different life.
And I've always been quite articulate, and when I began to notice patterns in my writing, I found that if I edited them, they had the potential to become literary art. And so my voices became my poetry, and my paranoia and delusions became my fictions that drive the plots and lines of my stories and books. And so my journey into creative therapy had begun.
Now people are talking about it, and they're actually giving it a name, and they say, well, this is what it actually is. So it's been around for a while.
We're as diverse as any other group of people, and I think that's what's happening now, is that more people are looking for the different voices about mental health, rather than just saying, that's the one voice of mental health, that's the one voice of anxiety, that's the one voice of depression.
Well, I think the way it works is the fact is that you will know after a certain amount of time whether keeping your brain or your mind occupied is one of the key factors in relation to you being, and I use this word normal very, very loosely because like I said earlier on, everyone's normal is different.
So I've always had the arts and mental health, and Disability Arts Cymru are as an organisation that over the years have supported me in projects.
In addition to writing, I sing my songs, and my voices now harmonise with me. And as technology has moved on, I use phones and tablets to create films and produce music to express my thoughts and ideas in a visual and auditory arena. And others have joined me on this path and collaborated on many projects in many genres and mediums that has helped them too.
Bipolar and schizophrenia are kind of put on the same level as doing two of the big ones. But the difference is that people don't see manic depressions as a threat.
It's something I think that you have to get into for a certain period of time. And once you've done that, you'll probably become hooked on doing whatever you're doing. Hence the reason that we make films and we tell stories and we do a combination of stuff, either light-hearted stuff or stuff which is what we call issue stuff.
For the ones that it does work for, it's spot on, like.
Yes, you have to give it a go for a certain amount of time, and you will soon find out after that period of time whether it works for you or not.
I'm actually managing to get out there and do stuff now, something like, the filmmaking, making music videos, all that sort of thing. And even with some of the horror stuff and everything I do, it's this stuff that gets it out of my head, like, yeah. So, when it's out of the head, the demon's exorcised, move on to the next project, like that.
What's interesting about stereotypes is that stereotypes are there for a reason. Everything that you've seen, has happened. So, but what happens with people with mental health and other disabilities, it's the fact that a lot of these portrayals are constantly repeated quite lazily. They don't look at the individual. We're an incredibly diverse group.
This is all about knowledge, and on the other hand, it's all about ignorance.
One of the things we do with Fritz Street's films is to sort of get the message out, so to speak, of everyone can tell their own stories, because we tend to generally do exclusively with iPads and iPhones for recording and stuff like, just to show that, making films is accessible to everyone.
It has got better, actually. Over a period of time, it will improve.
All I can really suggest is try it and see if it works for you.
It's like a tool in a toolbox, and that's all it is. I mean, it's something that we've put out there in various films that we've made, purely and simply from the point of view of saying, this is something that might work for you. Now, I didn't realise at the particular time that it was working for me. And I found that when I was not occupied, when I wasn't being creative, when we weren't actually doing stuff together, I was getting more agitated, and I was sort of going slightly back to that same sort of condition, which it does happen now and again because it can remain over a period of time in different forms. But for me, all I would say is that this is something that we've put out there and people should try it. There's no guarantee it's going to work for them, but it works for us. So why not give it a go?
Oh, Mabs, that is unbelievable that you have somehow got the microphone in your hair. You're so unprofessional.